Welcome, Sens Talk.
Here comes Smith, is going to pass across. Oh, he scores! He bats it in! Tim Stutzler wins it for Ottawa. Mitchell Grant is going to put the finishing touches on an Ottawa win. Oh! See you later. Go Sens, go!
Hey everyone, welcome to Sens Talk. I am your host, Brendan Plant. We're going to get to our interview with Bruce Garrioch in just a moment. I just want to say thank you to all of you for all your support as we just passed 4,000 subscribers. What a moment it is. I started this YouTube channel back in 2013 as just, for fun. Like many of you probably, when I was a kid, I was like, you know what, let's make a YouTube channel with my buddy Noah Luden. And to see me not only still doing it 13 years later or so, but to see how far Sens Talk has grown, the amount of support we've received by you, the Sens fans, through some really bleak years especially, it means the world to me. Getting to cover this team and talk about the Ottawa Senators nearly every single day is a dream come true. So thank you all so very much for your support. And with that, let's talk to Bruce Garrioch of Postmedia right now. All right, we are joined with TSN's and Postmedia's Bruce Garrioch for the third time. I only have a few people that have ever been on the show 3 times, Bruce. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Bruce. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to covering the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. So I think there's a lot of excitement in the city. I think that, I thought when the Senators went to the Eastern Final in 2017, I certainly didn't think it was going to be this long, but here we are. But good to go.
Well, you've covered the team since day one, so you've seen some crazy playoff series, but most importantly, you've seen many, if not exactly all, of the Battle of Ontario series. You've experienced it all. So just a quick note on that. What should Sens fans like myself, who've never been in the building for a Battle of Ontario in the playoffs, what should we expect in Game 3, Game 4, hopefully Game 6, potentially here in Ottawa? What's that barn going to be like? There's been a lot of talk about it.
Well, I always kind of go back to 2002 when Ottawa took a 2-0 lead in Game 6 here. And the atmosphere in that building, and I was sitting beside Wayne Scanlon, and the atmosphere in that building was just electric until Ricard Pearson hit Ty Domi, and he probably bled for the first time in his career. I think, the city is so excited. I think the Senators, Brandon, deserve some credit for doing the best they can to keep Leaf fans out of the building. I mean, you and I both know people who don't want to go into that rink anymore when the Leafs are in town.
The stands and whatnot, it gets crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think my wife went to a Leaf game, and the two guys were fighting behind them, and there was popcorn and pop all over the place. It might have been probably beer, shouldn't say pop. but I think that the one thing I think we're going to see, and look, the rink in those days was never dominated by Toronto fans because Rod Brydon made a move and Eugene Melnyk was only around for one of those series, but Rod Brydon and Roy Malacker and Cyril Leader made a move at that time if you were in a Toronto postal code, you basically couldn't buy tickets. Mm-hmm. You had to be in an Ottawa postal code. So those days, the rink was not dominated by Leaf fans. And I think we're going to witness the same thing here. We're not going to see a rink that's dominated by Leaf fans. We're going to see a rink that's dominated by Ottawa fans. And that is a massive shift from what we see during regular season. And you know what? You can talk about, Brandon, you can talk about how great it is every time Toronto plays Ottawa, but they haven't played each other in playoffs in 21 years. And this is going to reignite a rivalry that was once storied and needs to get back to that level.
It's just good for the game of hockey, and I cannot agree more in terms of the turnout for the games. I think you can't keep all Leaf fans out. I mean, it's the most popular.
No, you can't.
You can't. But I think 70-30 ratio is something that should be expected, and I think that's good, considering the fact...
I think it's going to be higher than that. I do. I think you're probably looking at 85-15. I mean, I don't know.
I'll
I
take it.
don't know any Senators fans that are selling their tickets off to Leaf fans. I mean, we even saw Brandon on social media this week. The how do I put this? Like, you know, you
Facilitating.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, facilitating the
Shout out Kevin
Senators
Lee, by the
fans.
way. Shout out Kevin Lee.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah,
that
absolutely. Absolutely. But enough with that.
and
I think Sens fans are tired. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I mean to cut you
no,
off.
but the anticipation of them getting back to the playoffs is really more so what this is all about. I don't think anybody saw that this was going to be an 8-year wait. Um, when they made the move for Matt Duchene in 2018, I was telling the story to someone. We came home from Sweden.
Mhm.
They had swept the Colorado Avalanche in a 2-game series, and everybody was excited because I think they were either first in the Atlantic Division or probably maybe even first in the Eastern Conference at that point.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, I'm
they just yeah, they just went off the cliff.
Yeah, and I still honestly I think there needs to be a documentary on what happened there because I do not know what happened, but it completely reversed after a hot start with Matt Duchene. It just fell off a
Yeah.
cliff. And that happens. That's sports. That is sports, unfortunately. But I do think Sens fans are tired of the crowd talk and whatnot. Like you just said, there's going to be a lot of Sens fans there. And I'm glad to hear that you're more optimistic than me, and I love to see that. I should get on your level, Bruce. But I just want to talk about the regular season for a quick moment before we get into the playoff talk. Just talk to us quickly about the regular season as a whole and what was your biggest improvement this season for the Ottawa Senators, the difference maker for why they're a playoff team now.
Well, look, they haven't scored as much as everybody thought they would. Certainly at 5-on-5, their power play has been very good at home, and it hasn't been very good on the road. Um, but they played. I think they were 1 game under 500 on the road because after they lost that game in Columbus, um, 29-11-2, I think at the Canadian or 29 at the Canadian Tire Center. Um, to me, they there were two things I saw with this team. One was maturity. I had a good chat with Travis Green in his office after they had lost on the Sunday to Anaheim, and I went down to his office after his media availability and had a chat with him just about where things were at because they'd had a disastrous November. And one of the things he said to me at that point was, I had to tell these guys that basically he didn't give a crap what happened with this team last November or the November before or the November before that. That it was time to forget the past,
Yeah.
move on with the present, and look ahead. And I think the one thing that Travis Green and coaching staff deserve credit with is making sure that they had 2 5-game losing streaks, but for the most part, just when you thought they were falling, they were able to pick themselves up again. I think he's done a good job of keeping them on an even keel, uh, erasing the history, but also getting the young players to play better defensively. Now, look, I there we're going to talk about keys going into the series because there are some players who absolutely 100% need to be better if the Senators are going to win this series. But I think they can go in with some confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think the regular season matchups really matter when it comes to the playoffs. Completely different ball game now once we're in the postseason. However, for the Sens, it's good for them. They come in with literally no pressure. They're the underdogs. They haven't been in the playoffs 8 years. No one really, I mean, some people think they can upset them, but no one expects them to be the favorite going into the series.
No,
And most of all, they have that confidence knowing, yeah, I was watching Tim Stutzle's interview the other day with Spin Chicklets, and they're like, yeah, we think we can beat anyone, but just knowing that they know for sure they beat the Leafs all 3 times this year. That must be a good confidence boost going into the playoffs. And then with Travis Green, we'll talk about him later. I think that coaching matchup between him and Berube is interesting. But I do have to give credit to Travis Green, like you just said as well. He's really instilled a sense of maturity onto the team, not to use your words, but more so just the consistency. Yeah, a couple of 5 game losing streaks, like you mentioned, but overall, this team has been able to string together wins consistently. And like you said, even when they're slipping, they come back with 2 out of 3 or whatever. So they're finding ways to get points. Now we need to find ways to get wins in the playoffs. And speaking of that, we know there's a practice. We're recording this Saturday morning just before the Sens practice. I'm kind of wondering what you expect the Sens forward lines, defensive lines to be going to game one on Sunday.
Well, I think it's what we saw Thursday night, right? I mean, I don't think I do think that, you know, Zub will be back with Sanderson, and Shabbat will certainly be back with Jensen. And I believe it. I do believe that Clevin and Matt and Palo will start the series. I guess if people want to focus on the fourth line, I would assume that Matthew Highmore would be out at this point. But, Nick Cousins is coming back from injury. Is he going to play every game? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see if he's able to, how quickly he's able to get up to playoff speed. There's a couple things that are interesting to me. Is number one, I guess the Belleville Senators are out. So Levy Marilainen will be up here. I mean, is there any appetite to dress Levy Marilainen as the backup? Because what we've seen from Anton Forsberg this season is probably the reason they're not going to re-sign him. He just he's gone up and down, and he's a very nice person, but I think if you have to turn to your backup at any point during the series, I think that's going to be something that you're going to have to watch.
Wow, interesting. Okay, I know people are saying Levy Marilainen for sure will be, here on the roster as the third
Oh,
guy.
he'll be here, and look, I think out of respect for Forsberg, they'll make him the backup. But
Like, let's say
if
in
they
the
have,
worst case scenario, Allmark, God forbid, gets hurt. Who do you see starting that game that Allmark can't start?
well, I would say Marijuana. Like, and that's. I mean, he
Yeah,
had 3 shutouts. He won them. He won them games. But that's just my take. That's not based on any knowledge. That's just, I think, going to be an interesting situation to watch
for sure.
in this series. Um, you know, uh, but it shouldn't have to come to that either.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
it,
hopefully,
yeah, Harry Neal told me once you can take your goalie out once during the playoff series. You then can't go back to him.
yeah,
So, like you can't I think it was during the Hamburglar run when they took the Hamburglar out and went
Andy.
to Anderson, and it was either him or Jamie McLennan said to me, well, at this point you can't turn back, right? Like you can't. So I think that will be an interesting subplot to watch. Like I say, no knowledge, just something I will be keeping my eye on.
What some Sens fans are also keeping eye on is the third pairing and fourth line. Now, you mentioned that Highmore you expect to not be in the lineup. Could a guy like Cruikshank, I think he'll get a call up at the very least. Could he get into the lineup? And then also in the third pairing, you said Man and Paulo. Can a Gilbert or Hamnick also draw in? How do you kind of view these bubble players going into the playoffs? Do they really have a shot? Are they going to start, or are they going to be on the bubble still?
Well, I think Clevin and Matt and Palo have struggled down the stretch here. I can totally see a scenario where Travis Hamonic plays some playoff games. He's played 900 games in the NHL, and he's got playoff experience, and the Senators don't have enough of that. I do think that Highmore will play. I don't see Crookshank playing again. If you've got to go that route, that means you're in trouble in the series. Um, it basically, if you've got to make changes, you either have injuries or you're in trouble in the series. Okay, so I don't see scenarios where um, where guys like Crookshank or Gilbert or Hamonic play unless number one, they have injuries, or number two, they're in trouble.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you have to make changes.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um,
Fair enough for
you
sure.
know, I'm not. They already have enough guys without playoff experience. I don't think it's advisable to put more guys in without playoff experience. I could see a scenario though where Hamonic certainly plays.
Interesting. I mean, that makes sense. They've elected to play him a lot as a veteran presence there on that third pairing. I just wanted to throw one more thing at you. Carter Yakimchuk, you did mention he would not be brought in for the playoff run. He would be brought in potentially for Belleville's playoff run. Now they were just eliminated last night in a loss to Laval. Is there any chance that he's considered to be brought? I know that the Hitmen
Well, he'll
are
be
up
brought
the
in.
series, but he
No,
could be brought.
he'll be brought in.
Okay,
But the scout look this because it would be good for him to be around the team.
for sure.
Um, I just again, if he plays, there's one of two scenarios: injuries or you're in trouble. So I guess you don't want to see him in either of those situations. Mind you, we did see. I was thinking about this. Um, we were at Madison Square Garden, and Mark Stone made his playoff debut after coming from junior, right?
Yeah.
And I think he played a no, I think he played a regular season game. I think it would be a lot to ask Carter Yakimchuk to step into the Battle of Ontario, but people love when I'm wrong, so maybe they can hope I'm wrong.
People love when I'm wrong too, Bruce. They love to hate. They love to hate. And yeah, I mean, especially for a defender, it's definitely much more of a difficult, ask. Especially in a playoff series, for a rookie to kind of step in quickly. Especially when his skating and defensive game still needs some development. So I hear you
Well,
on
and
that.
that's what they say. I mean, scouts who've watched him in the Western Hockey League say, "Look, this guy is a good offensive player, but they got to get the riverboat gambler out of him." And if it's okay to do that in junior, you do that in the National Hockey League, you're going to get burned, and it would be it would be a very high ask of to get him to jump into a National Hockey League playoff series. Certainly one that's going to be as intense as the Battle of Ontario, but I don't know. Maybe youthful innocence can take you a long way,
You
right?
never
Like
know.
you never know.
Playoff
I
is
just
crazy.
I just think if you get to that scenario, it's probably not a good scenario because other things have happened. I mean, when people talk about Ricard Pearson hitting Ty Domi in 2002, well, I think the reason Pearson was in the lineup was because Chara was hurt. You know, um, again, when you reach that point, like I was thinking about, I was saying this to someone the other day. I was thinking about Brady playing the other night, and he leaves in third period. Well, I've probably been around too long, Brandon, but I remember in 2000 when Wade Redden broke his foot in a meaningless game against the Tampa Bay Lightning at the end of the year and wasn't able to play in the Battle of Ontario. You know,
I agree.
um,
Look, I
so
will say, especially in terms of the Carolina game, I think you mentioned this as well. I was more than fine. I think you mentioned this on TSN. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was more than fine with Kachuk not playing that game. I understand
yeah,
he wanted to play, so
I
you're going to
think
let him play. But I
yeah,
was
I
more than
think
fine
for
letting
his own, and I kind of get it. Like, I think for his own peace of mind, and
him.
there are things that all players always tell me that there are touches in practice that you can't, that just aren't the same as doing things at game speed. So I get it. I get why he wanted to play, but as soon as he got that high stick, I thought they got to get him out of there.
Yeah, and that
And
they
they
did.
did. Yeah, and they did because I thought it was just a smart approach. But I also knew when he spoke to the media, I knew he was fine.
Yeah,
Because honestly, Brendan, if he hadn't spoken to the media, then I think you could have the ambulances circling the building and they're panicking the streets.
I'd be
But
slamming that panic
I
button.
I can't no, but I can't wait to see this guy in the playoffs. I think we saw, I've said this to other people, but I think we saw playoff Brady Tkachuk in the Four Nations face off, and he was just fantastic with his brother. And we in Ottawa are finally going to get a chance to see playoff Brady Tkachuk in a Senators uniform. And I think that's something that we should be excited about. This guy that, Gary Galli always uses the expression that the golf expression that he plays from the tips. Brady Tkachuk plays from the tips at all times. And I was on a conference call. Oops, sorry about that. I was on a conference call, an ESPN conference call with PK Subban and Sean McDonough and Ray Ferraro the other day, and Mark Messier wasn't around to answer this question. I was kind of hoping he was, but they came to me a little quicker than I thought. But um, I asked them about what they expected to see from Kachuk in the playoffs, and Ray kind of gave me this answer that they might have to harness him a little bit, and because he may be so emotional. Um, but PK Subban came on and he said, I played that way. Like I was that kind of player, and I think people would agree that
Yeah,
PK
honestly,
Subban was that kind of player.
for sure.
And he said, I'd be willing to give him a longer leash. And I think that Travis Green will be willing to give Brady Tkachuk a longer leash. I think one of the things they can't let him do is fight because you don't want him getting a 10-minute misconduct or a 5-minute major or anything.
Him on the
So
ice.
just keep make sure he chooses his spots.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be that to me is the thing I'm most excited about in this series is seeing Brady Tkachuk in a battle of Ontario that means something. Because Brandon, you and I both know the way he gets under the skin of the fans of the Montreal
Oh,
Canadiens.
oh,
I don't think he's had that effect with fans of Toronto,
not yet.
right? Like
No.
not yet. But I think in a playoff series, I think he could.
Well, just imagining him, Pinto, Greg, Nick, Cousins, especially, who knows how to get under the skin of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, holy cow,
Yeah.
bunch of pests on this team. And I missed a few players. They're going to be chirping, they're going to be mean, and they're going to get into the heads of the Leaf players, hopefully. Which brings me to the next question here, where what should we expect from both teams in this first round, respectively? And also, what advantage do both teams have? Obviously, the Sens are more of the gritty, agitating style of game with more of a well-blended forward core. Well, the Leafs, in my opinion, have more of a top-heavy firepower. But what do you see as the advantage for both teams, and how both teams are going to, expect? What should you expect basically from both teams, and what are their advantages going into this Battle of Ontario?
Well, I think the advantage for the Toronto Maple Leafs is pretty simple, and it's going to come down to three or four guys, basically Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and Morgan Riley, and Anthony Stolarz in net, and all the people in Toronto keep telling me is how good Stolarz has been. Linus Allmark has a Vezina trophy. He's probably got the best goaltending resume that the Senators have had going into any playoffs, with the exception of the year they got Tom Barrasso. But Barrasso was coming off and pardon me, Dominic Ashe. My God, um, forget what I just said
It's
about Allmark.
morning. We all
Uh,
forgive you.
yeah, no, forget what I just said about Allmark. But Dominic Ashe was the best goalie that this team ever had going into the playoffs. But then I don't think he played. So you're right. Yeah. So I guess um, I look at it, and the advantage for the Senators is that nobody's picking them to win. I saw an interesting stat from stat athletes that Megan Chayka put out yesterday that it had the weighted opinion was that the Leafs had a 73% chance of beating the Senators. And it laid out all the stats, and I'm not a numbers guy, but um, the 5-on-5 scoring is going to be paramount. The Senators didn't have a 30 goal scorer this year. Tim Stützle, God love him, but he only had like a couple of goals in his last 20 games.
Yeah.
Um, um, but here's the thing that the Senators don't have. They don't have 60-pound weights on each shoulder of expectations. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are, this is 9 years, right? And um, they keep that they roll back with the same crew. The one thing I will say, I think where Brad Tree Living has done a good job. Brandon is number one. He got Scott Lawton,
Yeah.
who I think would have been a great fit here, but I think that David Perron has turned out to be a pretty good, trade deadline addition without making a trade. I think that, um, there was one thing. I was at a wedding in August,
Yeah.
and everybody was asking me, it was up the line, and everyone was asking me, what will it take for them to make the playoffs? I said two things. I said, number one, Josh Norris is going to have a 30-goal season, and they're going to have to get the goaltending from Allmark. Allmark got hurt. They got goaltending from other places. They traded Josh Norris for, I think, a better player in Dylan Cousins. So they've got they've got a healthy Linus Allmark, and they've got Dylan Cousins going to the playoffs. The biggest difference between these two teams is one is Canada's team is carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. The Senators, they're, how do I put this? And this is what I think the Habs might run into. I think the Habs made it on what, the last night of the season.
Yeah, game 82.
So okay, so they might get into that series against Washington, and I've seen this before, and go, "Oh my God, we made it!" Right? Like, it may just that they might go out in four, but hey, we had a great year.
And honestly, for
I,
them, no expectations. They did.
yeah,
Their
and
defense.
I think the Senators are not of that mindset. I don't think they're of the mindset that like, oh my God, we made it. I think, and I had this discussion with Travis after the game. They want more,
Mhm.
so there's an opportunity there for more. Um, but that I do believe they're in tough.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's easier said than done, but we've seen it happen many times in the playoffs. If you can shut down that
Well,
big three, you got a chance, right?
well, get in, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like get in, and
Yeah.
and,
And
and
anything that happens. It's the
that's
playoffs.
right.
The playoffs are always, I think it's the most wild playoffs in pro sports, for sure.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think I think I think there's still some pieces away from winning a Stanley Cup, but
You
I,
never know.
no, but you never know if they can. I think they can beat the Leafs. I don't make predictions because I always think, Brandon, I could either be one thing or another. I can either be a hater or a homer. So if I pick the Leafs, I hate them. If I pick the Senators, I'm a homer. I just think, because I know your prediction question was coming next. I
Yeah,
think,
you absolutely
well,
nailed
yeah, yeah. No, I think here's my thing. If the longer this series can go, the better it is for the Senators because those weights on the shoulder and right, like
There's that pressure on
it
the Leafs. They
yes,
got to get
yeah,
it done.
Brett,
They're
for
already,
sure.
there's Leaf fans already talked about round two. How many times do they need to
Yeah,
figure out you got to focus on round
yeah,
one first, Toronto?
yeah.
Don't have
And
twice the season.
I look, I think if this goes 6 or 7, I think we're talking about an Ottawa win. I really do. I think if the Leafs let this get past 5, it's an uh-oh situation for them.
And I will say this, the Leaf fans, there's a lot of them, but they're not very loud in their own barn. It's like a library there. So going from that, get a win there in Toronto, coming back to Ottawa with that barn, which is going to be absolutely insane after nearly a decade. I don't know. There's major upset potential here, I'd say.
Well, a friend of mine who lives in Toronto has like I don't know if they're platinum. Like I don't know if this person has access to the platinum suites at the bottom there. I don't know if you know the building at all, but
Near
that
the ice,
that bottom level, the boxes are actually underneath, and that's
right? Oh,
that's why
I don't know.
that's why at the start of periods there's nobody there. Okay,
Okay. Interesting.
um,
Good to know.
like behind the Leafs bench, they're all in boxes, but I think that I think the email he sent me the email just to show what it would cost him for his seats. And I want to say it was like basically it was going to be 20 grand for two seats for the playoffs, so 10 grand. My friend does a
Holy
seat on
cow.
the 100 level. My friend does a seat on the 100 level. His seat for basically 16 playoff games was $5,000. So you're talking, you're and same seat, pretty much the same seat. So you're basically talking double the price. That's why there's no atmosphere in there, and that's why
Shoots.
Hanlauer
Just
always talks
shoots.
about, yeah, that's why Hanlauer always talks about Brandon, having real fans in the building, right? Like I know that the price has shot up in the playoffs, but the Senators, a lot of the first round revenues are taken by the league. If the Senators get to the second round, then it becomes fairly lucrative for them. Not that they're not going to make money, but that's where it becomes fairly lucrative.
And what I will say is, I do remember prices back in 2017 for the playoffs. Times have changed. Regular
Yeah.
season tickets here in Ottawa are the cheapest in Canada, some of the cheapest in the league.
Oh yeah.
I understand. I understand that the rollout wasn't the best. However, the prices against the Leafs, that was always going to happen. And at the end of the day, this is a business. Now, I know you have a cutoff here, so I do want to ask you just a couple more if possible. You did steal my prediction question. I won't throw that
Yeah.
out at you.
Yeah. I'm not going to let you ask it.
But what I will
Homer
do.
or Homer or hater.
Exactly, exactly. I think I'm a bit of a homer here. I'm not gonna lie. I've taken my side. What I will ask you though is we kind of spoke about the veterans and stuff. I think we both agree that Giroux and Perron and whatnot are going to help this team in that maturity style. We kind of already spoke about that, but we kind of alluded to before the coaching matchup. You're talking about a Cup champion coach in Berube against Travis Green, who just had his best season as a head coach. Do you think a bit of an inexperienced bench? Sure, there's experience there with Mikey O and Alfie, of course, a Hall of Famer, of course, Travis Green. But you're talking about going against a Cup championship, coach. Is that going to play a factor in the series? Is that something Sens fans should think about when they're thinking about the series, or does it not really matter?
I I I think that one of the things we saw when it was Jacques Martin against Pat Quinn was Pat Quinn pushed every button. And so, pardon me, I think it's going to be up to the coaches to
Mhm.
push the right buttons. And one of the things I saw about Toronto during the season, Brandon, was that um, they lacked identity. So we're going to find out who's got the identity here.
Agreed. I mean, last thing I'll say here before I let you go, I know you got a practice coming up and whatnot there. Get some coffee into you. But yeah, no, I think the Leafs are a tougher team to play against than they have in the past. They're more physical. You got Carlo there, you got Lawton. I like the physicality that they have, especially on the back end there with Tanev as well.
Well, you're right. Like that defense has been rebuilt, you know?
In a great way. I'm jealous that they have Tanev
Yeah,
and Carlo. Those would be two great pieces.
yeah. No, for sure.
But I agree with you. They are the best team in the division. And every game I've seen them play, it's like they're kind of fighting it every game. There's not really much there. They find ways to win, which, hey, I think what that really comes down to is they have that elite skill that takes them over the top. In the regular season, you can get, away with that. Come playoff time, as we've seen in the past, it's much more difficult. So we shall see what happens, Bruce. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Oh, good to talk to you.
Um, Always great to talk to you too. Why don't you tell everyone where they can read your stuff, watch your stuff, follow you, everything in between?
OttawaCitizen.com. Twitter is Son Garrioch, and I'm hoping to do some playoff stuff with TSN with Clara and here in the games in Ottawa. So looking forward to it.
Beautiful. We'll talk soon for sure, Bruce. Hopefully for round number two. We'll see what happens
Well,
here.
we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I like the Leafs. I won't get ahead of myself. We'll just see what happens. We'll just see what happens. Thanks again, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, Brent.
Always.